Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, who essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and thank you so much for coming to this call and talking with me. Just to sort of start off, could you introduce yourself as well as walk us through your journey to get you where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Let me start with my undergrad. So I did my undergrad, my bachelor's in computer engineering from India. Then I was very interested in math, which is why I decided to come here to US for a master's in mathematics from Columbia. My major was math and my minor was finance. After that, I really wanted to be, my dream was to be a quant trader because I really loved my courses. And so then I moved to Bank of America to get started off with finance. Then I got a job as a quant trader at a hedge fund in Miami. I worked there for 6 months. And I think I realized it's not for me. I think like I learned a lesson over there that, uh, coming from when you're just in university, you don't know like how things work in the real life. And then sometimes when you actually go do the job, it's completely different from what you thought it was. And then I realized I like data science, the data science part of my job at Bayview, but not the trading part of it. And so then I decided to move to fintech, which is more technical and has a lot more data science opportunities. So I moved to fintech. I moved to this company called Simple, which is an Indian buy now pay later firm. And then now currently I'm working at Chime. And Chime is a fintech startup.
I was wondering how exactly you use sort of your math background and then like the stuff you learned at data science to sort of work in fintech.
So there are like tons of opportunities in different teams in any fintech organization. So for example, I work in risk. I work in fraud risk. So just giving a simple example, say you're using your debit card, right? And your debit card gets stolen by a thief. So what I would do is I would get that data. I would get any customer data. So I would get your data. And then suddenly I would notice, okay, from this card, Angelina's card has been stolen. And now it's being used to make transactions at stores which she usually doesn't go to, which she has never been to, or it's coming from, or I get your location data. And I realize, okay, this is not where you live. This is not close to where you live. So then I basically am able to identify that it's actually stolen. It's not you who's making those transactions. So then using that data, we basically build a model which is able to identify when your card is stolen or when, it's not the transaction is made by someone other than you. And I block that transaction so that your money doesn't go. And Chimes also maintains the brand of, taking care of its users. So yeah, that's where the data science part comes in.
Wow, that's really interesting. I was sort of wondering how like the newest like technological trends, like if artificial intelligence or machine learning like affects any aspect of your job or like makes it more challenging or difficult.
Actually, artificial intelligence really helps with my job. I think it has like improved my efficiency so much, especially with like for me, ChatGPT has helped me write code so much faster. Like I'm able to write my code like 5 times faster. If there's any error in my code, I just ask ChatGPT like, what's the error? And it usually puts me in the right direction, even if it doesn't give the exact answer. And also like, when you have an issue with your debit card, you call the company, and then there's someone on the call who's an agent who will work with you to fix that issue, right? So these agents are also using like AI to figure out what you are saying and then come up with a decision very fast. So yeah.
I see. I was also just wondering, like, when you say you analyze data and then you create the model, how long does this typically take you and how much data do you have to like look through?
Uh, the data could be data for like I think like 10 million customers. It could just be, it's a huge data set. And it usually depends, like say, you're solving a problem and there's an attack, suddenly there is this group of people from, just give an example, from one area, say from Michigan, right? Just from one zip code. They're suddenly they're taking over people's phones and then making transactions at an ATM in Michigan. So now this is an attack, right? Like this is like a cluster of people. So in that case, you need to act really quickly. So then you need to make a very simple model and get it done in 2 weeks. But then say you have a long-term problem where you just want to have a model which will make sure that your phone doesn't get stolen. If it does, what should be the policy and stuff. You have more time to think about it. In that case, it usually takes me at least 3 months to build a model. And then once I've built a model, I need to keep on checking if the model is working as expected for the next 3, 4 months. And then the model will get finalized and be applied to, all the real world users.
I see. I think you also mentioned before that you do some coding in your job. I was
Yeah.
just wondering, like, what sort of languages, if you're like proficient in them, would like help you in your like job in terms of coding and programming?
So I think for all data scientist jobs, Python and SQL are super important. Across all my jobs, all my 4 jobs, I have used Python and SQL like 90% of the day. And then I used Excel sometimes when it's like working with other teams which are not technical, say with finance teams, accounting teams, they don't know data science. So they wouldn't understand Python and SQL. So you need to know Excel to explain what you are doing to them. So, yeah.
And then I was wondering, like, it seems like your models might be a little complicated sometimes. How do you sort of break down like difficult information for people who don't have a data science background?
Yeah, so usually I share it in a PowerPoint presentation and really like make it go to the like a very simple concept. You don't have to go to through all the details because it's pointless, right? You just want to explain, like say you are from the finance team, you just care about the losses, right? You don't need to know about how I got to the losses. You just want to know the number. So I'll just explain the number and in a simple way, like how I would explain to a 10-year-old, I would just explain the process that okay, I cleaned the data, I got location data and the numbers are saying that this is the loss. So basically, like I think that's a really important skill to have good, clear presentation skills. So PPT, like PowerPoint and Excel is what I use generally.
I see. I was also just curious about some of your most enjoyable and rewarding moments at your job, like currently.
Oh, okay. So I think one example is like in my previous company, my company was like, it was a startup, right? So it doesn't have that much money. And we were under an attack from this area in India. And it's like, my company was based out of India. So like there were the people who had my company's credit card or debit card, they were poor. They didn't have that much money. So for them to lose money from their card is like a very big deal. Like they'll have survival issues. So we had like 1 month to figure it out before we would lose all our money. And then using the data that we had, I think it was only possible using data because these are transactions made online, right? You can't actually go and send the police or something like that. So what we did was by the data, we got to know that the location of somehow the location of all of these users whose cards were stolen was coming from one zip code in India, from a village in India. And once we identified, okay, that's coming from this zip code, so then every time we detected that location, we would block those users. In that way, customers stopped losing their money and we and they continued like working with our company. So I guess this was a satisfying moment because I felt I actually made an impact to their day-to-day lives. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I was also sort of wondering where you saw like this field of data science, like fintech and sort of like protecting users from attacks, like a few years into the future or like a decade into the future.
From tax fraud.
No, just in general, like your job, like where do you see it sort of like moving in like the future?
So honestly, I think like one trend that's going on is like AI. I am super intrigued by the trend. One of the most recent news I heard was like there's some company who's trying to. So right now, AI helps make our jobs easier. It helps makes payments easier. But then there's one company, I think, which also has AI agents who will make the payments for you. Instead of helping you with payments, it literally makes the payments. So you just say, buy bananas from Whole Foods and we'll do it for you. So I think I'm really excited for this new future. And, like payments is like a multi-billion dollar industry. So, I mean, the opportunities for AI being used are just enormous. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Wait, that sounds kind of scary. Like if I tell like the AI to buy food for me, like do you think that will like make your job harder to like detect whether or not somebody's actually buying it? I'm just curious because like it sounds really crazy.
Yeah, I think fraud is like always changing. Like once we identify a fraud trend, fraudsters will change their method and you have to change it. So it's again going to be just a new change. I don't know if it'll make my job harder. I think it's going to be as hard as it is now.
Okay, sounds good. And then just to sort of end off, do you have any suggestions or pieces of advice for high school students, but particularly young women and girls who are interested in pursuing math or data science in the future?
Yeah, I think like for me, I have always like noticed that women and even me, like I think I used to be like not confident about myself. And the men usually they do tend to be more confident. And I think like in data science, like because we think it's a traditionally male dominated field, I think like we have this inherent fear that maybe, you're not good enough. So I think my advice would be like to just always keep in mind that your perspective is unique. You should share your ideas and you shouldn't and you should really work on your confidence because that makes a whole lot of difference.
Okay, thank you so much for coming to this call today and sharing your story and experience with me. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.